in another episode of Carpooling with Ben. You know, the holidays are upon us, and there's lots of great things to do around this time of year, whether it be going to check out Christmas lights or seeing the giant menorah be lit up each night at Providence City Hall. But there's a really cool event coming up rather quickly, and if not for the event, if you can't make the event aside, you got to check out the podcast that is putting this whole thing together from the Chuck and Brad podcast. Chuck, thanks for coming in.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is great.
Lovely day outside. Hazy shade of gray outside.
Yeah,
it's beautiful weather.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, oh yeah.
So you guys have been doing this podcast for quite some time now.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
You're almost at 350 episodes.
Yes, yeah. We just did. We actually did our live 300th episode at FET in Providence in May. But yeah, we've been doing it since I think it was January 2009.
Wow.
Was when we started. Yeah, it's been fun. I love doing it. I love it.
It's a unique kind of variety show.
Yeah.
If you close your eyes and you just sit back and listen, it's almost like the Muppets.
Yeah.
To a degree, but for those at home, what is the whole premise? It's humor. It's comedy.
Well,
it's fun.
Yes. The podcast started because I'm in the band Senior Discount. We're a punk band. And Brad, my co-host, is in the Providence Improv Guild. He's an improv player. And Senior Discount, when we started out, eventually we started getting these bigger opportunities, and we didn't really know how to sell tickets or get out to people because we were such a new band. We didn't really have any names.
Sure.
As a name at all. So we said, let's make some like sketch videos, maybe about our situations. We made these videos that were like, we're playing this big show, we need to sell tickets, and it was, the first one I think was like, here are the reasons you're going to say you can't go to the show.
Yeah.
And we kind of went down him and knocked him down. And we sold a lot of tickets. Yeah, it became a bigger and bigger thing. Like my degree, I went to school for film.
Okay.
So we started making these comedy videos, and they got longer and longer and longer, and it became like, the Senior Discount videos basically became like the show The Monkees, but for adults.
Right.
It would be about the band and about the characters in the band.
Sure.
We would do storylines. And eventually, my old bassist that used to be in the band, I went to one of his improv shows, and I saw Brad Rohr. And I thought, this guy is so funny, he's uptight, conservative, slight, meek. I was like, he's such a good contrast.
I think in the history of Carpooling with Ben, it's the first time the word meek has ever been used.
He's very
meek.
He's very different than the band. The band had this reputation of being very wild and crazy. A lot of those videos, a lot of them were scripted like sitcoms, but some of them were prank videos or stunts or something. Like we filled our old lead guitarist room with 300 pumpkins for Halloween one year.
Very thoughtful.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of pies.
Yes. And, after we kind of had that reputation, I was like, oh, this guy would be so funny to bring on as a counterbalance to that, who's kind of like against us. And so we brought him in. And after we started working together for a very short amount of time, I was making the Senior Discount website, and Brad had brought up the idea of us doing a podcast. And I said, you know what, that would bring people back to the website every week. If we had this new content, we could plug the Senior Discount shows, you could plug your improv shows, and we'll talk about whatever you want. Maybe we'll talk to people we know. And so we just started from there with just the plan of talking about stuff that we liked and stuff that we were doing. And it kind of ballooned into, it's funny, you kind of give any two creative people a show and say, hey, you guys have this much time every week to do this thing. They're going to kind of take it in whatever direction they're going to naturally go in, especially when you don't have any rules to follow or anything like that.
Right.
So it became more than that, and we started interviewing other people. We interviewed we went to the Tribeca Film Festival this year.
Wow.
We interviewed Jeff Tremaine, the director of all the Jackass movies.
Oh, that's cool.
We were like in a legit press room set up by Hulu. It was awesome.
It's the real deal.
Yeah, we interviewed Real Big Fish this summer, the band.
Really?
Bowling for Soup.
Okay.
It's awesome. And we've done a lot of that. A lot of local people too. Obviously, comedians like Ray Harrington and Brian Beaudoin, who are both on our Christmas show that we'll talk about. So the podcast is really about two people who are artists kind of going through life. And it's the art that they love, the art that they're doing, and kind of how they see the world. Me and Brad. I work for, have you seen the TV show Impractical Jokers?
Yes.
Yeah. True TV. Yeah. So basically, Brian Quinn is one of those guys on Practical Jokers, and he does a podcast with Walt and Brian from AMC's Comic Book Men.
Okay.
And I work for their podcast. I do a lot of video stuff.
Okay.
So we went to the Gramercy Theater in New York last year, Brad, myself, and my girlfriend Gina, and we filmed their first live filmed episode. And I'm the one that directed it and edited it, and it just came out on Blu-ray recently. But with that, becoming friends with them a little bit, Brad and I actually made a pitch video of us to become writers for Impractical Jokers, and we sent it in. We talked to Casey Jost, who is one of the head writers.
Yeah.
And we were invited in August to submit to write for this season of Impractical Jokers.
Wow, congratulations.
Well, so it was to submit to write, meaning
Right,
they might. So what happened
You might
was,
be a winner.
Yeah. So we submitted, had this very intense week of making this. Literally, we probably wrote 3 episodes of material in this packet in this week. We're waiting. Talked to the head, the showrunner. They didn't pick us.
Okay.
So we did a podcast about the rejection and the devastation
How to deal with
and
it.
the loss.
Very therapeutic.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really cool aspect of the podcast is like, some weeks we might be like, we loved Thor Ragnarok, it was so good, oh my God. And it might just be that for an hour and a half. And some weeks it's like, me and my girlfriend of 6 years just broke up and we're gonna sit down and talk about it.
Right.
My house just burned down last week. We didn't get the Impractical Jokers opportunity that we've been working towards for years.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff is really powerful and cool. So you have this really interesting show where you get to live with us through the fun times, the stuff we love, and the really hard times that I think everyone can relate to in different ways.
Sure. Well, you're real, and that's the beauty of podcasting.
I think so
Even,
too.
Doing something like this, where it's a different kind of series, and a lot of television, a lot of that standard episode season type format is starting to switch towards, we see it with the Netflix, we see it with the Hulu, even
Freeform.
Absolutely. And now that Facebook is starting to pay for content, YouTube is really pushing.
Yep.
So there's just so many different avenues to go with this stuff, and
Oh, absolutely.
it's really great, and to see somebody like yourself turn one opportunity with a band into another opportunity with the podcast is great, because that just takes it to a whole nother level.
I think so too. I think that that's kind of the world we live in, is like, I think that people are becoming more multifaceted, and it's a difficult world because everything is so much more competitive now that everyone has access to everything and everyone has a voice.
Sure.
So it's more difficult. So I think it is more fun to be multifaceted. So it's great to be able to play a show with the band and say, hey, come check out our podcast. And then I tell stories about behind the scenes with the band.
Right.
Like, that's fun. And I think about bands I grew up loving, like Blink-182, like Green Day, Against Me, Rancid, NoFX. Like, I love those bands.
Right.
And I would love it if they had a podcast, like during that time, and we're
Sure.
telling this background stories and stuff like that. Luckily, you do kind of have a version of that sometimes. NoFX released a great book. But yeah, so I think that it really helps to cross-promote like that. And honestly, sometimes I think I do it a little bit too much, but that's okay. I think that's fine.
Well, the important thing is having the audience there.
Yeah, I think so.
And you mentioned the point of all these different ways. It really drives creators, because that's what you are. That's what you're. And myself as a musician and doing this and podcasting as well.
Mm-hmm.
You become this creator, and your audience holds you to a higher standard. You don't have to worry about getting picked up by one of the major networks, so long as you have that audience and it reaches and you continue to deliver good content that they want to see.
I think so too.
That helps to grow. So the next step of what you're doing is you've got a show coming up pretty soon that really is open to anybody.
Yeah. So basically, it's really interesting.
You're not going to make me buy tickets like right here, right now, are you? I'm not going to have
gonna
to
shake you down.
Absolutely. You've got the card reader for your iPhone.
Yeah. No, so basically, we, with the band, we were lucky enough that we had enough of a fan base that we were able to do weird events over the years. So we would have normal concerts and shows, but like we did an event one time where Hot Topic in the Providence Place Mall was like, yeah, you guys can come do an acoustic show here. So I'm like, all right. So we had this documentary we filmed about ourselves, and it was kind of more of like a Jackass movie than a documentary, to be honest. And we recut it, put new stuff in it, showed it in Providence Place Mall, sold out the screening at the largest theater, not the IMAX theater, in the largest one in the Showcase Theater.
Sure.
Scheduled it for right after our Hot Topic performance. It did it, so the Hot Topic performance, we walk into the mall, the Hot Topic is filled with kids all across the bridge and stuff like where it used to be on the third floor.
Right.
We walked in, we pushed through with our instruments, played the show, everyone ran up to the movie theater and watched the movie. It was amazing. It was 350 kids in the theater watching this movie we put together, right? And we were able to kind of create this world where people were willing to go to these alternative events that we put on. And that led to different things. So our old bassist, myself, Brad. We put on a sketch show in Newport at the Firehouse Theater at one point.
Yeah.
And we would continually do screenings. Eventually they became live podcasts.
Okay.
Which, the podcast is very improvisational. We might have 7 topics and we'll talk for a while about whatever. But the live podcast we said, if we're going to charge and it's going to be live, there should be a visual element and it should be more than we normally provide.
Sure.
So it was all segments that were planned out. Some were video segments. We had a big prank that we played on Brad that I debuted live at the podcast. And around that time, Brad and I started doing stand-up comedy.
Okay.
So we're doing our, figuring out like 7 minutes of stand-up here, 7 minutes of stand-up there. And how this Christmas show came about was we wanted to do a live podcast for this past Halloween. And we said, man, like doing the live podcast, it's so much work.
Yeah.
Video production is so much work for it, all this different stuff. And I had already had a bunch of video projects going on. I was like, I'd be willing to do a live Halloween show that's all just live on stage. So we write it ahead of time.
Sure.
Then we go and perform it. No video stuff, no pre-recorded stuff, just 2 microphones, me, Brad, and some stand-up comedians. And, Brad and I weren't doing stand-up. We were kind of serving as hosts. We were on stage for probably 75% of the night. We had 4 different segments. And it went super well. So this Christmas show is called Chuck and Brad's Best Christmas Ever.
Okay.
And it's going to be the same thing, where we're going to be the hosts. We're going to be on stage for probably, an hour and 10 minutes, and the comics are going to be on stage for about 25 minutes. We have 3 comedians on it: Brian Beaudoin, Frank Gazerro, Kirsten, Logan.
Okay. And
then we have our buddy Ray Harrington, who is a stand-up comedian, and he's not going to be doing stand-up that night. He's going to be at he knows he's going to be part of a segment, but he's going to come on stage and find out what it is when he's there.
All right.
Which is great. But yeah, so basically it's kind of like, it is like a comedy variety show.
Okay.
You're going to get stand-up comedy from the stand-ups. You're going to get sketch/improv and some audience participation as well from Brad and myself for the rest of the night. And it's hard because we come up with the ideas we come up with, I think they're more fun as surprises.
Okay.
And I think that we really keep the audience on their toes. But it is a show for everyone. It's definitely about Christmas. This isn't a situation where we just like have a show booked in December.
Yeah, it's a Christmas show. It's about
Christmas.
everything else, but we have, we have a tree and we are wearing red hats.
Exactly. It's not that. This is like about Christmas. If you like the pop culture of Christmas, The Grinch, Christmas Carol, all the Christmas famous things, they're going to be incorporated. The show is about that. So we're doing this. So it's going to be great. It's Thursday, December 21st at the Comedy Connection in East Providence.
Great.
Show is at 8 p.m. Doors are at 7:30. Tickets are $10. But yeah, it's going to be a great night of very, very Christmas-themed experimental comedy. That's all I can say. It's hard to explain. We really want to keep the audience on their toes.
Sure.
So we don't want to give anything away before the show. But it's going to be great. ChuckandBradPodcast.com has all the info. You can listen to our podcast there and kind of get our sense of humor to see if you might be interested.
Well, it's one of those things where if you go through and you like it and you want to listen to more, obviously subscribing to the podcast via the iTunes.
Yep, we're on iTunes. We're on everything.
Stitcher and Google Play. Everything's there.
Yeah.
Which is great, and that's a huge thing. But if you want to experience for the first time the live version of it, this is going to be fun. It's Thursday the 21st. What time?
8 p.m.
Okay.
So doors at 7:30, show at 8.
Great. And right at Comedy Connection, which is, that's such a fun location.
Oh, it's great.
They got a great staff.
And I can't say, they've been so nice to us. Like the idea that we came up, we're like, hey, we're Chuck and Brad. We basically did like 10 shows over the course of 2 years because we're working on all this stuff. We're like, can we have a whole night to do whatever we want? And they're like, we guess so. Like people don't usually ask us that. And they gave us a great opportunity to do the Halloween show, and now it went really well for every party involved, so now we're doing the Christmas show. It's going to be awesome.
Would tickets be available at the door?
Yes, tickets will be available at the door.
But just in case it does sell out, because, the Comedy Connection is not a massive venue. It's not like Gillette Stadium where you have, 65,000 seats.
Yeah.
There's a chance that it could sell out in advance. So
yeah, the Halloween show is very well attended.
Get tickets now.
Yeah, ricomedyconnection.com will have the tickets.
Perfect. Or they can follow the links through your website.
That's right.
Direct people over there, and that'll be good stuff. Going forward into 2018, as you start the next season, if that, or the next year, calendar-wise, what do you have in store for the podcast? A bit of a name change.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now we're called Agreeing to Disagree, the Chuck and Brad podcast. That's always been our name for the past, however many years. 8, I guess, and almost 9. Wow. But
How time flies by.
it really does.
Sands through the hourglass.
But we're gonna drop the agreeing to disagree. I think that just the Chuck and Brad podcast makes more sense.
Was that a disagreement to drop it? Was there any kind of agreement?
A while ago, actually, it was 2 agreements. A long time ago, we're like, should we drop this? We're both like, no, we shouldn't. And then recently, I'm like, should we drop this? And we're both like, yeah, we probably should. So it was good.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
And I will say, in conjunction with the Comedy Connection show, very strange, we're doing a weekly show on WBRU on Fridays.
Okay.
1 p.m.
You listen to it online.
Yeah, WBRU.com or the WBRU app. And it's called Chuck and Brad's Yuletide Takeover. We just talk about Christmas stuff and plug the show. That's going to be every Friday at 1 p.m. until the 21st. And and by the way, if you miss those, because they play live, if you miss those, it's fine. We're going to compile them for a Christmas podcast this year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so don't worry if you don't miss them, but definitely check them out. And we're doing a web series leading up to the show. So every Monday, we're doing, it's called The Road to Chuck and Brad's Best Christmas Show Ever.
All right.
And it's a fictionalized web series, 5 to 8 minute long videos of the progress of the show. So episode 1 went up the first week of December, episode 2 went up the second week of December, and episode 3 is going up on December 19th. And they're just going to be 3 short fictionalized videos about how the show is going. And I'm very, very proud of them. I've never shot this way before. It's very improvisational. We actually didn't plan anything before we shot. We just shot, but I'm very proud of how they're coming out. So we're doing a lot of stuff in conjunction with this show to really try to get people out and support real, unique comedy. We're trying everything we can to attract people, to produce high quality content, and bring something new to people.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Chuck of the Chuck and Brad podcast.
Yeah.
Also of Senior Discount.
Yes.
And you've got quite a reel as well. So thanks so much for joining me in the car
thank you for having
today.
me. This is great.
Lovely ride. It hasn't gotten any brighter outside, but sunny days are ahead, I'm sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you
Check
very
out
much.
the event. Go find them. Follow their podcast. Subscribe. You're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming for a ride, man.
No problem. ChuckandBradPodcast.com. We'll have all the links to everything, so you can check everything out there.
Fantastic.
Thank you, man.